The Justice Department subpoenaed Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and Meadows is reportedly complying with that subpoena, making him the highest-ranking Trump official so far to respond to a federal subpoena in the criminal investigation of the attempted coup on January 6th. There are also bombshell new text messages in a very bizarre scandal involving former NFL quarterback and Trump supporter Brett Favre that reveal just how corrupt the conservative movement has become. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. You know, it took like 2 full years, but it really seems like the Justice Department is finally kicking it into gear when it comes to these Trump investigations. They're seizing phones, sending out dozens of subpoenas, and executing search warrants. I don't know what changed. Merrick Garland used to seem like one of those movie detectives on cruise control because he was only a month away from collecting a pension, and now he's like a renegade cop on a Harley and a leather jacket who kicks in doors and holds perps out windows while hissing, "You can either tell me what happened or your brains can tell the pavement." The point is, the DOJ's Trump investigation seems to be rapidly intensifying. For example, yesterday we told you a truly heartwarming story about a delightful young man named Mike Lindell who had his phone seized by the FBI while he was at a Hardee's drive-thru. As he explained in a video, the FBI agents at the scene told him not to talk about it, but he did anyway.
The FBI came after me and took my phone. They surrounded me at a Hardee's and took my phone that I run all my business, everything with. They could have just, what they've done is weaponize the FBI. It's disgusting. I don't have a computer. Everything I do have that phone, everything was on there. And they told me not to tell anybody. Here's an order don't tell anybody. Okay, I won't. Well, I am. So, there you go.
Well, that is just the kind of recklessness I would expect from a 61-year-old man who eats at Hardee's. Also, I doubt that paper says the words, "Don't tell anybody." It's an order from the FBI, not a note passed in 5th grade. "Hey, later tonight, we're all meeting up at Dead Man's Curve so we can search Mike's phone for evidence. Don't tell anybody." I bet that piece of paper isn't even an order from the FBI. In fact, if you zoom in, you can see it's actually just a letter from Hardee's that reads, "Your behavior was rude, your voice was too loud, you were in the drive-thru without a car, and as our staff repeatedly told you, you cannot bring a pillowcase and demand to be filled with breakfast sausages. Please do not patronize this establishment again." But also, when we first played this clip yesterday, there was a very revealing detail I glossed over and want to revisit.
Everything I do have that phone, everything was on there.
It was? Well, then I guess jackpot FBI. Usually you need to raid multiple offices and homes and sift through every box, closet, and drawer you can find for hours, but not with Mike Lindell. "Yeah, I keep it all on my Motorola flip. Text, call logs, lists of crimes, both completed and plans, and all my picture. I don't trust the cloud or any clouds because they look like big fluffy pillows, but in reality they're filled with air." Now, you might be wondering which of the many Trump investigations the Lindell raid was specifically related to. Well, it's a very bizarre and complicated story, but basically federal agents apparently wanted to know more about Lindell's potential connections to a plot concocted by a pro-Trump clerk in Mesa County, Colorado named Tina Peters, who was indicted earlier this year for election tampering, among other things. Basically, Peters wanted to prove that the 2020 election was tampered with, and in the process, she herself allegedly tampered with election equipment by breaching voting machines. Peters obtained copies of election information, which later wound up online, according to an indictment. To perpetrate the scheme, Peters allegedly used a local IT consultant's ID card without his knowledge. Peters has been charged with 3 misdemeanors and 7 felonies, including conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation and identity theft. Imagine being wily enough to impersonate an IT consultant and then dumb enough to be in cahoots with Mike Lindell. "Mike, it's Tina. The feds are on to me, but don't worry. I've encrypted each and every one of our communications and put them behind multiple firewalls." "Good to hear, Tina. I got everything you ever sent to me on the one phone, and also I put you in my 5 under Crime Tina." So at this point, one can only assume the Justice Department already has at its disposal a wealth of information related to the coup attempt on January 6th, the various figures involved in it, and the machinations that led up to it, especially after the newest revelations we learned last night that Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has also been subpoenaed and has responded to that subpoena.
We are learning that former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows has complied with a subpoena from the Justice Department's investigation into events surrounding January 6th. So this makes him the highest-ranking Trump administration official, that's known to have responded to a subpoena in this federal investigation.
So far, Mark Meadows, the former President Trump's chief of staff, has complied with the DOJ subpoena by turning over documents, the same documents that he turned over to the January 6th committee.
Wow, even Trump's former chief of staff is turning over documents now. And this is a guy, by the way, who is, by all accounts, always on his phones. In July, he was spotted walking around D.C. while reporters shouted questions at him about the January 6th hearing and, for the most part, refused to look up from his phone. He looks like me when my kids are demanding to go to the beach. Yeah, sure, we can go to the beach. I just need to set my fantasy lineup and check out the new memes, and I want to see some Instagram ads from sneaker companies that only exist on Instagram ads. Of course, the only thing stranger than Meadows' refusal to look up from his phone was the fact that he was wearing a fleece outdoors in July. Do you know how hot it was in July? It was so hot that during one show, I wore a sweater and nothing else. You just couldn't see because of the desk, although it was a little jarring when I got up to greet the guests. Now, you might remember Meadows as the guy who was in many ways at the center of the attempted coup, who, among other things, arranged various coup-related meetings and sent insane conspiracy theories about vote tampering to the Justice Department. But Meadows was also, according to the people around him, extremely checked out in the days leading up to the insurrection. Former Trump aide Cassidy Hutchinson recalled after Rudy Giuliani told her about the plan to march to the Capitol, she asked Meadows about that plan, and Meadows once again did not even look up from his phone.
After Mr. Giuliani had left the campus that evening, I went back up to our office and I found Mr. Meadows in his office on the couch. He was scrolling through his phone. I remember leaning against the doorway and saying, I just had an interesting conversation with Rudy, Mark. Sounds like we're going to go to the Capitol. He didn't look up from his phone and said something to the effect of, there's a lot going on, Cass, but I don't know. Things might get real bad on January 6th.
Man, this dude was checked out like a substitute teacher showing his class Amadeus on Laserdisc the day before summer break. Hey, Mr. Meadows, we gonna learn anything today? You're gonna learn what happens to the human spirit when you're forced to toil in the shadow of a childish show-off. Also, you're all getting an F. An F. Murray Abraham, that is. Oh, I'll wait till it gets what it deserves. Although, in fairness, that is probably the one and only moment from all the January 6th hearings that I related to. If I had sold my soul to Donald Trump and was facing a lifetime of criminal exposure and historical disgrace, I, too, would check the out. I'd have one of those giant Costco containers of cheese balls, except be filled with Xanax. So, virtually everyone in Trump's orbit, from his chief of staff to his weird pillow friend, is under investigation. Now, if it feels to you like every story you hear about the Republican Party and conservative movement is about the deep rot of corruption at the heart of GOP institutions, that's because it's true. And to drive the point home, there's a truly insane story that we're learning more about this week that captures the fundamental truth about just how corrupt and morally bankrupt conservative governance has become. The story involves retired quarterback and dungarees pitchman Brett Favre, millions of dollars that were supposed to help poor people in the country's poorest state, and a shadowy deal to build a volleyball facility.
New court documents filed this week include text messages that appear to show Mississippi's former governor helping NFL Hall of Famer Brett Favre secure millions to build a volleyball facility, money that came from funds meant for needy families in one of the nation's poorest states.
The texts appear to show the former governor, Phil Bryant, helping Favre secure millions to build a volleyball facility at his alma mater, University of Southern Mississippi. And mind you, his daughter also played volleyball there. Now, the money was allegedly earmarked, though, for family welfare programs at the state.
Again, this is federal money for welfare for poor Mississippians going to a volleyball facility that Brett Favre's daughter is going to play in. The woman who ran the nonprofit, Nancy New, reportedly coughed up $4 million in misused welfare money. And when that was not enough, she then allegedly paid Favre, Brett Favre, millionaire Brett Favre, an additional $1.1 million personally to him, supposedly for radio ads, paid for out of a fund for welfare recipients.
Now remember, this is the same state, Mississippi, that's also been facing a disastrous water crisis affecting the majority black city of Jackson. And yet the state's Republicans are so cartoonishly corrupt. They stole money set aside for poor people and gave it to a multimillionaire NFL quarterback. I think his punishment from this point forward, Favre should not be remembered for his 16 seasons with the Green Bay Packers, but for his one season with the New York Jets. I'm sorry, Brett. Actions have consequences. Although it should be noted, they did win the Super Bowl that year. I mean, they went 9-7, but that's like a Super Bowl for the Jets. You know, sometimes we have international viewers who leave comments for me and they say, we really don't like these Jets jokes because obviously we don't get them. So just let me explain. It's going to take a minute, and I apologize for taking time out of the day. Football is a sport. The Jets are at football. But the craziest part of this scandal is that Favre turns out to be just as dumb as all the other corrupt weirdos in Trump's orbit, because as the deal was happening, he apparently wrote a text message explaining that he was concerned people would find out it was happening.
Text show Favre was worried about how it might look. He wrote, "If you were to pay me, is there any way the media can find out where it came from and how much?"
Yeah. Yeah, dude, there's a way. I love that he's asking if it could ever go public via a text that eventually went public. Was the next text, would hate for this to be a screen grab one day that they show on the news to help document our activities. This is the rot and the moral bankruptcy of conservative governments at its core. This is the same conservative movement that's hell-bent on dismantling democracy and installing themselves as unelected rulers. And apparently, while they were all engaged in various scandals and criminal schemes, they were texting each other about those scandals and criminal schemes and telling each other,
"Don't tell anybody."
This has been a closer look. The midterm elections are coming up, so to make sure that you're good to vote in this election, visit our good friends at headcount.org to check your voter registration status or to register to vote.